Hello everyone, welcome to my second video about combat in EVE Online. In this video I'll talk about how every turret works, the three main types of turrets and a quick summary about their varieties. Turrets are harder to understand compared to missiles due to the fact there are more factors involved in both the hitting probability and damage calculation, and these two factors nearly go in a pair. This means that you have a 25% reduction to hit chance. You are also going to experience nearly 25% reduction in your damage output, but these are not accurate numbers. The equation used to calculate the chance to hit and consequently the damage dealt is actually a lot more complicated for rookies to understand. But do not panic, because most of that stuff is seemingly constant during combat and can be summarized simply in tracking and range variables. Let's start from the easiest factor, which is range. Turrets have an optimal and a fall-off range, which means that they have a 100% chance to hit a giant immobile target, which is at or below optimal range, while they have a 50% chance to hit the same target at optimal plus fall-off range, due to projectile trajectory deterioration, and they have nearly no chance to hit anything at optimal plus the double of fall-off. Most of the time, you want your target to be between your optimal range and optimal plus 1/4 of your fall-off, so you will still have nearly 90% chance of hitting and dealing damage, or at least being at your optimal plus 1/3 of your fall-off, for an approximately 10% reduction in hit chance and damage. So, what about angular velocity? Turrets need to track the enemy ship to properly aim at it, and this means that the greater the tracking, the better your turrets will be at following your enemy movements. Keep in mind that when you're orbiting your target at a constant velocity, the closer the enemy ship is, the higher the angular velocity is, and the harder it will be for your turrets to track it. Tracking does not completely allow or deny damage, which means that you can still have a 50% chance to hit a target which is moving at your turret's tracking speed and happens to be below optimal range, and, most of all, they are resolved instantaneously every second without a previous chronology of what happened. There is actually another important variable which can drastically improve or decrease your tracking speed, which are the signature radius of the enemy ship, which is basically the ship's size, and the signature resolution of your turret, which is basically the accuracy of your turrets. Since a target's signature will be compared to your turret's resolution, you can either experience a huge boost or a huge loss to your tracking due to bigger or lower signature radius. For this very reason, if you're flying a big ship, you should never underestimate smaller ships, because they can easily out-track your guns, or get under your guns, and avoid turret damage if they can manage to orbit you at close range, and you don't have other modules or weapons to counter small fast-moving ships. Oddly enough, tracking works and shares the same efficiency graph of fall-off, but this is a good thing, because you will not have to struggle with strange calculations. Since tracking is measured in radians per second, to check your target speed for a 50% chance to hit him at a defined range, all you have to do is multiply the chosen distance with your tracking, and that's it. This is extremely useful, because you can actually see what your target speed should be at the optimal distance from you, or at your optimal plus 1/4 of your fall-off. In summary, targets can deal a good amount of DPS at their optimal range and at 1/4 or 1/3 of their tracking speed, while dealing little to no damage the farther away you move from your optimal range or tracking. It could look like a very niche role compared to missiles, but you can either deal more DPS to smaller ships which happens to be trying to approach you in a straight line, so you can literally shoot them in the face due to very low angular velocity, or without any delay, unlike missiles and drones. So let's get started with turrets types. There are energy turrets, hybrid turrets and projectile turrets, each one with its unique statistics and just a few stats in common depending on the turret size and range of engagement, short and long variations. So for energy turrets we have beam and pulse lasers for long and short range engagements. For hybrid turrets we have blasters and railguns, and finally for projectile turrets we have autocannon and artillery weapons. There are also 2 or 3 variations for both turret types and range. They share similar bonuses ranging from easier to fit, better tracking but with lower damage and range, to good all around, and to harder to fit, worse tracking, better range and more damage. I leave the exact values and modifiers to you and your proper usage of the compare tool. Just don't get stuck with all the meta variations, and let's get started with turret types. Energy turrets are mostly used by American ships. They don't consume ammo and thus don't require reloading because they use frequency crystals to fire, which affects damage output and range depending on the crystal fitted. Lastly, they use up to the most capacitor of all turrets, which is not a big deal since most ships focused on energy turrets can field very generous capacitors. Energy turrets can only deal EM and thermal damage, and since they have always a very short fall-off, you should only fight your enemy at your optimal range or shorter. And keep an eye on tracking, which is not too bad since pulse lasers have the best optimal range of all shorter range turrets, and the beam lasers have the best tracking of all long-ranged turrets. Keep in mind that those statistics are balanced by the frequency crystals you load into the turrets and the various ship bonuses, and you will find that laser turrets are the best for medium-ranged engagements, but can still perform very well on close-range engagements despite the lower tracking of pulse lasers. Hybrid turrets are probably the most common turrets in New Eden because they are used by both Caldari and Gallenti, and they have the highest DPS, or damage per second, on paper. But due to target resistances and a short ideal distance, they tend to deal lesser damage than expected if you can't dictate range or orbit your target properly. Hybrid turrets use some cap to fire, they consume ammo and can only deal thermal and kinetic damage, although this simply means their DPS is pretty much consistent against any Tech 1 ship due to resistances. But like energy turrets, you can pretty much always choose the best ammo type depending on the range you want to engage your enemy at. Blasters have the highest DPS on paper and the best tracking of all short-range turrets, which is balanced by mediocre to short optimal range, combined with a pretty short fall-off. While railguns still have a very good DPS, good optimal range and fall-off, but mediocre to low tracking, making them the most common sniping turrets used in fleets for long range and long-lasting engagements. Projectile turrets will be loved by anyone looking for PvP, or player versus player, because they are the good all-around turrets, and even if they have the worst optimal range, it is compensated by the longest fall-off range in the game, which means that you can still apply most of your damage at the same or slightly worse optimal range of hybrid turrets. You can choose the damage type to deal by swapping to a different type of ammo, and projectile turrets are immune to energy vampires and neutralizers because they do not need capacitor to fire, so they can keep firing as long as you can maintain the lock on your target and they do not run out of ammo. You can often choose damage type, but more advanced ammo can only deal explosive and kinetic damage. Autocannons are the most balanced turrets to use and they are very easy to fit, but they also require more compromises and in-real-life skills to use them properly. Due to tracking ranging from mediocre to bad and poor optimal range, you are probably never gonna be able to squeeze out all their damage potential. You will often need to fight further than your effective range due to range and tracking issues, especially if you are moving too fast. But since min-matter ships are the only race specialized in projectile turrets and most of their ships have both small signature radius and high maximum speed, your opponent could have more tracking issues than you do. Artillery cannons are also special because their alpha damage is so high that you can one-shot kill many ships if they are not buffer tanked properly, but these turrets are balanced by the worst tracking speed and the highest power grid requirements of all long-range turrets. So here ends my tutorials on turrets. I hope you have enjoyed it. Remember to like or dislike this video accordingly to your thoughts, and let me know in the comment below if you have any question or if you have found any mistake. With that said, thanks for watching and fly safely until my next video. Bye bye!